I want to direct this one more to Jennifer, kind of jumping on what you're saying. Licensing agencies like SOCAN, ASCAP, are they still relevant? Sorry, and if they are, great. How do you make themselves stronger? Because there's your sheriffs, because they originally wanted to shut down radio. If people don't know this. And then they went, well, we're not going to be able to beat them, so we're going to license them. So that's how it basically started. So for SOCAN, what's SOCAN's feel on this?
Well, obviously we believe in collective licensing. That's the backbone of what we do. 110,000 members strong, that's a strong voice, right? In Canada, we have a bit different situation up here. We do have good rates. We do have comparable rates around the world for streaming. Sorry, but, for a semi-interactive site, we go to the copyright board like Eddie was talking about. And when you go to the copyright board, you get to open up the other side's books. You're not negotiating blind. Everybody puts their rates forward, their proposals, and that's how the rates are established. So much has been talked about, but at the end of the day, if direct licensing is a threat, direct licensing can only happen if you give away your rights. And I think that what Mike was saying earlier about, public opinion and how these services put themselves out there as kind of the innovators, they're looking for your content to move their business forward, and they're looking for it at a cheap rate. That's not SOCAN's business. Our business is to license them for what they're using, and to make sure that we're constantly going to get the rates that you need and to get those increased, with the copyright board, keep putting forward the reasons why you need to be fairly compensated for your work. So, they might come across trying to say that they're the innovators, they're the creators. You're the creators. These guys are still almost like a traditional business model. They want to sell subscriptions and they want to sell advertising. And that's where they're still at that early stage. They're not quite at the Rogers and the Shaw level, but does YouTube want to be a broadcaster? Yes. They're going to close off that wall at some point and get a subscription in there. And we're going to be there making sure that they're paying you to use that work. At the end of the day, it is about collective. And at the end of the day, you guys hold the cards because they're your rights. And they can't sell anything. You can have the best app, the greatest interface, but you're not going to go to it if there's no content behind it.
Eddie, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can just make a comment on what both Jennifer and Mike were saying. I think Mike is right. The posse, I think is an interesting analogy. But from a creator's standpoint, here's my concern, and maybe everybody, or certainly Mike, Jennifer, whoever wants to comment. You've got these different posses right now. So let's talk about the collective management posse for a minute, as Jennifer said, and rightly so. And has been touched upon earlier, the collectivization of our rights, individual songwriters, composers, had no way of really licensing hundreds of broadcasters, thousands of broadcasters, and had no clout to do so anyway. And so, of course, a guy named Bourget in 1850 or so in Paris got together with other composers and started this whole collective management movement. So it was started by creators who understood really Mike's point, which if you don't collectivize your rights, you don't have any clout. And of course, 162 or whatever it is years later, 63, sorry, we're in a world now where that situation has gotten tremendously worse in the sense that the power equation is much more than I think Bourget or anybody even 50 years ago could have imagined on the side of the big concerns, the big posses. So here's the question, though, and this is why direct licensing is a concern to me. In the collectivized world, creators are on the board. They're on the board of SOCAN. They have a role in the management structure. They have a role in decision making. Google has absolutely, and Mike, I think will agree with this, Google and Apple, two massive companies, Apple, the biggest company in the world by market cap, they've monetized our work already. It's not a question of it not being monetized. It's a question of none of that monetization coming to the people who made the music. I've been talking about fair trade coffee a lot these days and saying that for creators, we're really in exactly the same position now as the folks who got together, whatever it was, 20 or 30 years ago and started the fair trade coffee movement. There was this enormous value chain with huge corporations, Starbucks and international coffee distributors, and your local supermarket that were making a lot of money on coffee. The only people in the value chain who weren't making any money were the people who made the essential element to the entire chain, the people who grew the coffee. Well, that's exactly the position that creators are in more or less today. So the way the coffee, third world coffee growers approached that particular problem is that they collectivized and they created a system where they said, look, we need to be included in the value chain. So I think from a creator standpoint, that's the issue. Yes, we have to align ourselves we have to collectivize or align ourselves with larger concerns that can represent us and have clout. The question is, who is going to represent us properly? I think we know, as Michael pointed out, Google doesn't seem to have our best interests at heart. No matter how they structure it. With all due respect to Apple, I mean, I've been buying Apple computers and loving everything they've made since the early 80s. Steve Jobs, before he passed away, said, I know that 19 out of every 20 songs on people's iPods did not come through the Apple store. But he didn't do anything about it. Because why? It doesn't matter to him. He's still selling iPods, which of course became the iPhone. So we do have to align ourselves in some kind of a power structure so that we do have some kind of clout. But I think it's a very dangerous time now if large corporations start taking over the space that collective management has occupied this last 163 years. And I'm concerned about what's going to get down to the creators. I mean, at the end of the day, those of us who make music, I just want to make a living. I've never gone to the music business to be rich. I'm sure that's true of most of the people who do it. But I would like to be able to make a living. And so that's the concern. How much of that, these huge power structures, how much of the revenue is going to flow through to the creators?